The loner rancher waited for his mail-order bride, and a woman twice his size stepped off the wagon. The desert planet of Red Mesa turned slowly beneath a pale twin sun, its endless plains glowing orange and gold. Dust rolled across the land like waves, and far in the distance, tall metal wind towers turned quietly, collecting energy from the dry air. Life here was not easy. Only stubborn people chose to live on the frontier. Caleb Walker was one of those people. His ranch stood alone miles away from the nearest settlement, surrounded by long fences and wide grazing fields filled with engineered livestock. The animals looked like a strange mix of cattle and scaled creatures, designed by science to survive the harsh storms and thin atmosphere of the planet. Caleb worked from sunrise to sunset, fixing machines, checking water pumps, and watching the horizon. He liked the silence. Or at least he told himself he did. Years ago, he had come to Red Mesa to escape crowded worlds and noisy cities. Out here, there were no expectations, no crowds staring at him, and no painful memories following him too closely. Just land, sky, and work. Still, loneliness had a way of creeping into even the strongest heart. That was why he had signed up for the Frontier Partnership Program. The idea was simple. Settlers on dangerous planets could request companions through an interstellar service designed to help isolated colonies grow stronger communities. Many ranchers had done it. Some found love. Others found business partners or lifelong friends. Caleb had hesitated for months before sending his request. He never expected much from it. Now he stood outside the small settlement's docking yard, hat pulled low against the wind, watching a long cargo wagon descend slowly from the sky. The vehicle was shaped like an old Western carriage but powered by humming anti-gravity engines. Dust lifted as it landed, and a group of settlers gathered nearby, whispering with curiosity. Mail order arrivals always drew attention. Caleb shifted uncomfortably as he waited. Around him, people joked and nudged each other, guessing what his partner would look like. "Probably a tiny city girl," one man said with a laugh. "Hope she knows how to ride," another added. Caleb ignored them. He had requested someone practical, someone who understood hard work. Appearance had not mattered to him. At least, that was what he told himself. The wagon door opened with a slow hiss. One by one, passengers stepped down, a young couple holding hands, an older trader carrying heavy crates, and a small alien with bright blue skin who quickly disappeared into the crowd. Then the last passenger appeared. Silence spread across the docking yard. She was tall. No taller than anyone expected. Nearly twice Caleb's size, she stepped carefully onto the ground, her movements slow and controlled. Her skin carried a faint silver tone that reflected the sunlight, and her broad shoulders gave her a powerful presence. Instead of looking threatening, she seemed calm, almost gentle, as if aware that all eyes were on her. Some people stared openly, others whispered behind their hands. Caleb felt his heartbeat quicken. This was not what he had imagined. She paused, scanning the crowd until her gaze settled on him. Without hesitation, she walked forward, each step steady despite the uneven ground. "Caleb Walker?" she asked, her voice deep but soft. He nodded slowly. "That's me." She inclined her head respectfully. "I am Arca. I accepted your partnership request." For a moment, Caleb did not know what to say. Up close, she seemed even larger, but there was kindness in her eyes, a quiet patience that made him feel less defensive. "Well," he said finally, clearing his throat, "welcome to Red Mesa." The crowd slowly returned to their conversations, though many continued watching from a distance. Caleb picked up one of her bags, surprised by its weight. "You don't have to carry that," she said gently. "It's fine," he replied quickly, though his arms strained slightly. She pretended not to notice. They walked toward his ground vehicle in silence. "I should tell you," Caleb said after a moment, "ranch life isn't easy, long days, rough weather." "I expected nothing less," Arca said. "I chose this place because it seemed honest." Her answer surprised him. As they drove across the desert, she watched the landscape with quiet curiosity. The sky stretched endlessly, broken only by distant rock formations and scattered solar towers. "Your world is beautiful," she said. "Most people just call it empty," he replied. "Empty can be peaceful." He glanced at her briefly, wondering what kind of life she had left behind. The ranch appeared on the horizon as the twin suns began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and purple. Arca studied the buildings carefully, the barn, the water tanks, the small house sitting alone against the vast land. "This is yours," she asked. "Everything you see." She nodded slowly, as if understanding the weight of responsibility. Inside the house, Caleb felt suddenly self-conscious. The space was clean but simple, filled with tools and practical furniture. "I wasn't sure what you'd need," he said awkwardly. "There's a spare room." "That is more than enough." She set her bag down carefully, moving with surprising grace for someone her size. Later, they sat at a small table eating a simple meal. Conversation came slowly at first, both unsure of what to say. "You don't seem surprised," Caleb admitted after a while. "About what?" "About me," he said. "Most people expect something else when they hear frontier rancher." She considered his words. "I read your record. You are known for helping neighbors during storms and for treating workers fairly. That mattered more to me than appearances." He looked down at his plate, unsure how to respond. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows softly. "What about you?" he asked. "Why leave your home?" She hesitated, then answered quietly. "Where I come from, strength is expected to serve war. I wish to learn another way to live." Her words lingered in the air. After dinner, Caleb showed her the barn and grazing fields. The livestock approached cautiously, sniffing at her hands before relaxing, as if sensing something familiar. "They like you," he said with surprise. "They sense calm," she replied simply. Night fell quickly, and stars filled the sky like scattered lights. Standing outside, Caleb realized something had changed already. The ranch no longer felt as empty as it had that morning. As they returned to the house, he felt both nervous and hopeful. This partnership was not what he had imagined. But for the first time in a long while, he found himself curious about what tomorrow might bring. Morning came early on Red Mesa. The twin suns rose slowly over the horizon, painting the sky with pale gold light. Caleb woke before dawn, as he always did, pulling on his boots and stepping quietly into the kitchen. For a moment, he forgot that someone else was in the house. Then he noticed the second mug sitting beside the stove, and he remembered. Arca. He wondered if she would still be asleep. The spare room had been quiet all night. He poured coffee and stepped outside, breathing in the dry air. The ranch stretched endlessly before him. Fences marked grazing lines, wind towers spun slowly, and distant shapes of livestock moved across the plains. Footsteps sounded behind him. He turned to see Arca stepping onto the porch. She moved carefully, as if adjusting to the planet's gravity and terrain. The early light reflected off her silver-toned skin, giving her an almost peaceful glow. "You wake early," she said. "Ranch doesn't wait," Caleb replied, handing her a mug. She accepted it with both hands, studying the steam rising from it. "This is coffee?" she asked. He smiled slightly. "Yeah, might taste strong." She took a cautious sip and paused. "It is intense." Caleb chuckled quietly. It felt strange to laugh, but it came naturally. After breakfast, he showed her the daily routine. They walked toward the barn, and she listened closely as he explained the livestock, hybrid animals bred for endurance and adaptability. "These fences keep them safe from predators," he said, pointing at a reinforced barrier. "Storms sometimes break them." She examined the structure carefully. The design is efficient, but reinforcement points could be stronger. "You already analyzing my work?" he joked. She tilted her head slightly. "Observation is respect, not criticism." He nodded, appreciating her honesty. As they began repairs on a damaged section of fence, Caleb noticed something quickly. Tools designed for humans felt small in her hands, yet she used them with surprising precision. When heavy metal posts needed lifting, she handled them easily, saving him hours of effort. By midday, the sun burned hot above them. "You work hard," she said as they paused to drink water. "Out here you don't have a choice." She looked toward the distant horizon. "I understand that." Caleb sensed she meant more than ranch work, but chose not to press. Later, they moved toward the grazing fields. The livestock approached cautiously, snorting and watching Arca carefully. One aggressive animal stomped the ground, preparing to charge. Caleb stepped forward instinctively, but Arca raised her hand gently. She lowered herself slowly, keeping her posture relaxed. The animal hesitated, then sniffed the air. After a long moment, it relaxed, turning away. "How did you do that?" Caleb asked. "I did nothing," she said softly. "Animals understand intention." He scratched his head. "Wish I could do that." As the day continued, word spread through the settlement about the rancher's new partner. When they stopped by the trading post for supplies, conversations fell quiet as people stared. Some looked curious. Others seemed unsure. Caleb felt the familiar discomfort of being watched. Arca noticed too, but showed no reaction. She moved calmly, greeting people with polite nods. Slowly, tension eased as a few settlers returned her greetings. Outside, Caleb sighed, people just need time. I am patient, she replied. On the ride back to the ranch, a sandstorm appeared suddenly on the horizon, a towering wall of dust moving fast. Storm, Caleb muttered, accelerating the vehicle. We need to secure the outer fields. They reached the ranch just as wind began to rise. Dust filled the air, and visibility dropped quickly. Caleb rushed to anchor equipment, but one of the larger gates had broken loose. Without hesitation, Arca ran forward against the wind, gripping the heavy gate with both hands and forcing it back into position while Caleb secured the lock. The storm hit fully moments later. Inside the barn, they waited as sand hammered the walls. The animals shifted nervously, and Arca moved among them calmly, soothing them with quiet sounds. You're good at this, Caleb said. In my world, storms were different, she answered slowly. The way she said it made him curious. What was it like? He asked. She hesitated, then spoke carefully. My people are trained from youth to be warriors. Strength is valued above all else. I was expected to fight, to lead in battle, but I wish to learn another way to live. Caleb leaned against a post, listening. So you left? Yes. Many believed I was abandoning honor, but I wanted peace. He nodded slowly. He understood more than she knew. People came to frontier worlds for similar reasons, to escape expectations, to start again. When the storm finally passed, the sky turned clear and quiet. They stepped outside together, inspecting the damage. Several fence sections had collapsed, but the ranch still stood strong. We did well, she said. We did, he agreed. As the sun set, they worked side by side, repairing what they could. Conversation flowed more naturally now, small jokes, shared observations, moments of comfortable silence. That evening they sat on the porch watching stars appear. You don't talk much, she said gently. Never had much to say, he replied. She looked at him thoughtfully. Silence is not emptiness. He glanced at her, surprised by the understanding in her voice. For the first time in years, he did not feel alone sitting under the vast sky. Days passed, and routine formed between them. She learned ranch skills quickly, and he learned to rely on her strength and insight. Laughter became more frequent, though quiet. One evening, as they returned from checking the outer fields, Caleb noticed distant lights near the ridge, unfamiliar vehicles parked far away. His expression tightened. That's not normal, he said. Arca followed his gaze. Observers, maybe traitors, he replied, though his tone carried doubt. A feeling of unease settled over him. The frontier was never completely safe. As darkness fell, the ranch felt different, no longer just a place of quiet work, but a home worth protecting. And as Caleb watched the horizon beside Arca, he realized something else. He was no longer facing it alone. The lights near the ridge did not disappear the next morning. Caleb noticed them again as he stepped outside before sunrise. 3 small shapes rested against the horizon like dark insects waiting patiently. They were too far away to see clearly, but they were not part of the usual trade routes. He folded his arms and watched silently. Arca joined him a few moments later. She followed his gaze without speaking. They stayed all night, Caleb said quietly. Yes, she replied. They are watching. He felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Frontier life had taught him to trust his instincts, and something about those strangers felt wrong. We'll keep working like normal, he said, but stay alert. She nodded once. The morning passed with routine tasks, feeding livestock, checking water lines, repairing minor storm damage. But Caleb found himself glancing toward the ridge again and again. The feeling of being observed made the ranch feel smaller somehow, like the wide open land had narrowed. By midday, dust clouds appeared near the ridge. One of the unknown vehicles began moving slowly along the distant boundary of his property. They're testing the perimeter, Arca said calmly. Caleb frowned. That fence line marks private land. Anyone decent would ask before crossing. The vehicle stopped just short of the boundary, scanning equipment extending outward like thin antennae. Scanners, Arca observed. What would they want with a ranch? He muttered. She did not answer immediately, but her expression grew serious. They watched in silence until the vehicle turned and retreated back toward the ridge. The rest of the day felt tense. Caleb double-checked every lock and gate, and Arca quietly walked the outer fields, her presence steady and reassuring. That evening, as they sat on the porch, Caleb finally spoke what had been on his mind. You said your people were warriors, he said slowly. You think those strangers could be looking for you? Arka shook her head gently. No, if my people wished to find me, they would not hide. Then what? I do not know yet, she admitted. Night fell heavy and quiet. The next morning, Caleb decided to visit the nearby settlement to gather information. Arka accompanied him, riding beside him in the transport vehicle as wind swept across the plains. At the trading post, whispers filled the air. You seen those outsiders? One rancher asked. They've been scanning land plots, another replied. Heard they represent some off-world corporation. Caleb's jaw tightened. Corporations often ignored frontier laws, looking for resources rather than respecting settlers. What kind of corporation? He asked. Mining group, someone answered, claiming there's valuable material under this region. Caleb exchanged a look with Arka. Mining meant disruption, land seizures, forced relocation. As they returned to the ranch, silence filled the vehicle. If they try to take this land, Caleb began. We will face it together, Arka said simply. Her words carried quiet strength. Over the next few days, the strangers became more active. Drones flew overhead occasionally, scanning terrain. Vehicles moved closer to the ranch boundaries but never crossed openly. Caleb felt frustration building. They think they can just walk in, he muttered while checking fences. Perhaps they believe frontier settlers will not resist, Arka said. He stopped working and looked at her. You think we should prepare? Yes. Training began that afternoon. Arka showed him defensive techniques, not aggressive or violent, but practical ways to protect himself and his home. She focused on awareness, positioning, and calm decision-making. You already have courage, she told him. You only need confidence in it. He practiced with determination, surprised by how natural it felt under her guidance. In return, he taught her more ranch skills, how to repair automated systems, how to track livestock movement through sensor data, and how to read subtle signs in the land. Their partnership grew stronger through shared effort. One evening, as they returned from checking the far fields, a drone descended suddenly near them, projecting a holographic message. A tall figure appeared, a corporate representative dressed in formal attire. This land falls within our newly registered claim, the figure announced calmly. You are advised to vacate within 30 days. Caleb felt anger rise in his chest. This is private property, he said firmly. Registered and protected. The claim supersedes local agreements, the hologram replied. Arka stepped forward slightly, her presence commanding even through the projection. We will review your documents, she said calmly. Until then, you have no authority here. The hologram paused briefly before disappearing. Silence followed. They're serious, Caleb said quietly. Yes, Arka agreed. That night they reviewed old contracts and settlement laws, searching for ways to protect the ranch legally rather than through conflict. I don't want trouble, Caleb admitted. Protecting what you built is not trouble, she replied gently. Days passed and tension grew. Some neighboring settlers began gathering to discuss the corporation's actions, fear mixed with determination. For the first time, Caleb found himself speaking in front of others, sharing ideas and offering support. Arka stood beside him, her calm presence giving him confidence. One evening, after a long meeting, they returned home under a sky filled with stars. You spoke well, she said. He shrugged. Never been much for talking. You spoke from truth, she said. He glanced at her and felt something warm settle in his chest, trust, perhaps, or belonging. Standing together on the porch, watching the horizon where the strangers waited, Caleb realized how much had changed since she arrived. The ranch was no longer just a place he endured. It was a place he wanted to defend. And beside him stood someone who had chosen the same path, not because of obligation, but because she believed in it. As the wind moved gently across the plains, he felt ready for whatever came next. The morning felt different. Caleb noticed it the moment he stepped outside. The air carried tension, like the land itself was waiting for something to happen. The twin suns rose slowly, casting long shadows across the ranch. Far on the horizon, several vehicles moved toward his property. They are coming, Arka said quietly behind him. He nodded. He had expected this. After the corporation's message, it had only been a matter of time. Dust rose as 3 large transport machines approached the boundary fence. Smaller drones hovered above them, scanning and recording everything. Caleb's jaw tightened. This is still our land, he said firmly. Yes, Arka replied, and we will stand calmly. The vehicles stopped just outside the fence line. A group of uniformed workers stepped out, followed by a tall representative wearing polished armor-like clothing. The figure activated a holographic display, projecting documents into the air. "We are here to begin preliminary mining preparations," the representative announced. Caleb walked forward slowly, keeping his voice steady. "You're crossing private land." The representative smiled politely. "According to corporate law, this region contains valuable mineral deposits. Your settlement status is being reviewed." Arca stepped beside Caleb, her height and presence impossible to ignore. "We have reviewed your claim," she said calmly. "It conflicts with established frontier agreements. Until legal review is complete, you cannot proceed." The workers exchanged uncertain looks. The representative's smile faded slightly. "You misunderstand. Resistance will only delay the inevitable." Caleb felt anger rising, but remembered Arca's training: stay calm, think clearly. Behind him, several neighboring ranchers arrived on vehicles, forming a quiet line of support. Word had spread quickly, and no one wanted to face the corporation alone. "This land isn't empty," one neighbor called out. "We built lives here." The representative looked around, calculating. "You cannot stop progress," he said. "Progress doesn't mean pushing people aside," Caleb replied. For a moment, silence filled the air. Then Arca stepped forward slightly, her voice steady but firm. "My people value strength," she said. "But true strength protects rather than destroys. If your claim is legitimate, prove it through law, not intimidation." The representative hesitated. The presence of multiple settlers and the calm confidence in Arca's voice changed the atmosphere. Finally, he nodded slightly. "A temporary delay," he said, "but this matter is not finished." The vehicles turned and retreated slowly, leaving dust swirling behind them. Caleb released a breath he had been holding. "That won't be the last we see of them," he said. "No," Arca agreed, "but today you showed unity." Over the following weeks, the settlement worked together more closely than ever before. Meetings were held, legal documents reviewed, and messages sent to frontier authorities requesting protection. Caleb found himself stepping into a leadership role without planning to. He spoke for ranchers who struggled to express their concerns, helping organize resources and keep morale strong. Arca supported him quietly, offering insight and calm guidance whenever doubt appeared. One evening, after a long day, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. The sky glowed deep orange and the wind carried the scent of dry grass. "You have changed," she said gently. Caleb looked surprised. "Changed how?" "You stand taller, you speak without hesitation." He shrugged slightly. "Guess I just stopped hiding," she nodded thoughtfully. "And you?" he asked. "Do you miss your old life?" She looked toward the horizon. "I do not miss the expectations," she said slowly. "Here I choose who I am." Her words stayed with him. Days later, a message arrived from frontier authorities. The corporation's claim had been challenged successfully. Mining rights were suspended until further review, protecting the settlers' land. Cheers filled the settlement when the news spread. Caleb felt relief wash over him. For the first time since the strangers appeared, the ranch felt truly safe again. That evening, neighbors gathered for a small celebration. Music played softly, food was shared, and laughter filled the air. Many people approached Arca with respect now instead of uncertainty. "You saved this place," one rancher told her. She shook her head gently. "We saved it together." Later, as the celebration faded and quiet returned, Caleb and Arca walked back toward the ranch under a sky full of stars. "You could leave now," Caleb said carefully. "You came for a partnership program, no obligation to stay." She stopped walking and looked at him. "Do you wish me to leave?" she asked softly. He hesitated, searching for the right words. "No," he said finally. "I just don't want you to feel trapped." She smiled faintly. "I chose this place," she said, "and I choose to stay." Warmth spread through his chest. They reached the porch and sat down together, watching the wind move across the plains. The ranch felt alive, not just with animals and work, but with shared purpose. "I never thought I'd enjoy company this much," Caleb admitted. "You were never meant to be alone," she replied gently. He laughed quietly. Maybe she was right. The twin suns began to set, painting the sky with soft colors. Somewhere in the distance, livestock moved calmly across the fields and the wind towers turned steadily. Life would still bring challenges. Storms would come again, new problems would rise, but now the ranch felt different, not just a place of survival, a home. As darkness settled and stars appeared, Caleb realized that the partnership he once doubted had become something stronger, built through trust, shared work, and quiet understanding. And standing beside him was someone who had crossed the stars not to change him, but to walk beside him as he grew. Together, they watched the horizon, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring.